get over. What I want to do is show you a couple of things. Hopefully, still have my VPN connection. Yeah, it looks like it. So this is the, start with the right one. Now what I'm going to show you is that this is the offsite backup piece, and this is actually going to the S3 storage. And so I'll start with how I configure the target, then I'll show you the how we add the repository, and then the configuration. As Gil said, the VPG is still going to be where the atomic unit we're using to collect those VMs to do the backups. So what we're looking at here is actually the just a mapped drive, T drive, that is running on Amazon on S3. So it looks, what TNT drives, it's basically a software gateway that presents Amazon S3 as an SMB share, or as an SMB drive. And this is what the tool looks like. You download it. We actually have it from our download site, so you can download it, and you have a 90-day free trial, and that's what I'm running off of here. You run a simple wizard for the install. It shows up here, and then you just drop in your access key and your secret key, and then it maps it to whatever bucket you've created. So this is the target side as far as configuring a local drive that I can use for the repository. Now I'm going to go to the source side because I want to create the repository first of all, and I've already got this set up, but I'll show you where it goes. This is for offsite backup. I'm going to create the repository, and then I will be able to do a backup to the T drive. So from the new repository, what I would do is use the local share, and then just tell it // give it a name, and then validate it. Sure. Yeah, it's not gonna like me because I've already done it. So, but that's how we do it. Okay. Now, once I have that, all I would do is go to my create. I'm off screen a little bit here.
What's the file size you will put there?
The size of your workload. Can be 5 terabytes or 200 giga or whatever. The size of your workload.
I'm asking because if you have an Amazon Cloud connector like you have and making a local drive, and you put in a file that is 2 terabytes big, it has to process it all. If there's one single fail, you'll have to do it all again. Is that the fact here because you have that restraint, or are you doing it in small increments? Are you breaking the file up or not?
So that's the answer to that is depending on whether you're asking now or in the near future. So now we're using a third party.
This is what you're presenting. I have a cloud connector here. Can you put? What happens if it fails at 93%?
So currently with this third-party tool we're using, it will start again. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
But we're gonna, because as I said before, we're actually building our own capabilities within AWS, including full replication. The same replication level to AWS. Mm-hmm. Then we'll also go back and delete this tool and switch it with our own AWS implementation, which will be much more tolerant and will be much smarter.
Because that goes back to his question. If you use an object-based transport at the backend, if you break it into objects, it would be much easier to go to cloud.
Keep in mind that, for example, we have today when we're using volumes, we have journal volumes. There are all kinds of philosophy where you're putting the journal in the same volume, the same data storage, you're putting your recovery data or not, and faster, all that stuff. In Amazon, this all goes away. The journals, the actual data, everything is going to be object storage. So it's actually simplifying our story in a sense. It's actually making it easier because the configuration from the admin piece is much simpler. and our algorithms are also much simpler. So yes, we're going to push object storage as much as we can here because it helps us actually simplify the whole process.
And do you plan on extending beyond S3 into Glacier as well for the lower cost side? I mean, it's slow recovery, but it's...
Yeah, well, we definitely want to go there. I think that I understand that Glacier has some issues with very slow recovery, and which I'm not sure are actually, you can put it in an orchestrated product because it's so slow. But we'll figure out how to enable to use the Glacier kind of like capability, because again, for really long rotation backup, that's the classic solution.
Yeah, well, and for the drop, it's the same thing. It's a relative same API. It's just the recovery.
Yeah,
is the speed
the
issue,
recovery
right?
is really problematic. We played with that, and we were like, okay, how do we actually, automate? It's like the timeout. You can't deliver. You can't do any timeouts in English, right? It's like all kind of like. So we'll have to figure it out.
Okay, I'm not going to run this, but this is going to Amazon S3 as the target on the target site. And I've just set up a VPG. I've added the VMs that I want. Now, I still get the DR capability, so I can still do failover testing. I've just added this extended recovery because I want to back up those virtual machines for an extended period of time, and I'm going to dump them over to Amazon. So that's the concept there. So what this is showing you is what we have today, and then I'll show you the Hyper-V piece here in a second, which is what's coming tomorrow.
I think it's important to see that we just added this as an extended piece in configuration in your same virtual protection group. Again, the same atomic unit, very simple. You might want to show them how we do the automatic, weekly, monthly, all that, and we do the deletion automatically.
Yeah. So here's a simple setup. So we can do how long do we want to retain it? All the way up to a year. And then what's the frequency, Kenneth? Daily, weekly, and just depending on when we want to do it. So it's a very simple, straightforward schedule, and we also automatically do the cleanup to meet this schedule with the backups and the number of retries. And then you have the if there's a certain period of time that you don't want to be doing backups, then you can just cross those out and save them. So the interface is nice and easy to work with.
Can you access all these features via API of some kind?
Yeah.
Because you also have a PowerShell extensions for...
Actually, we switch more towards REST API, but you can, from PowerShell, you can go to REST API. Yeah,
Right.
all of our APIs are now, all our new ones and our old ones are all REST API, mostly because the people that are using that are the service providers that are automating workflows on their back end. And they're used to using REST API, and that's where everybody's going. So everything is REST API. We have a REST API for literally everything, creating VPGs, delete everything, all of that stuff. And so everybody that wants to add that in the backend, they can do that. Specifically, what Shannon was saying about deletion, the deletion is basically if you are choosing, for example, 6 months, we will automatically delete copies. So you will have, maybe daily, so a week of dailies, then 4 weeks of weeklies, and then 5 months of monthlies. Okay.
Are that 3 roles, or is that one profile?
This is like it's a one profile. So if you ask for 6 months, that's what will happen. If you ask for
No, can you put them together in like grandfather, father, son in one profile?
I'm not sure I understand.
I want from this. I want to protect this that many times in weeks, that many times in months, that many times in years.
No, you decide how long, and we automatically will delete with this profile, because we talk to customers and it seems that this profile actually caters for almost everything that they're doing anyway. Okay, so instead of giving them, hey, delete then and delete there, we're just giving them an automatic profile where we are diluting basically the backups by removing the weeklies after 1 month and the dailies after 1 week.
Okay, so if I were to save this, then it would kick off, obviously, saving that VPG. So I want to go over and show you what it looks like once a backup's been run. And what we do is we package it, as Josh was talking about. It's a package of the VPG information, but it's also got the VMs. So these are the individual VMs that were in that extended recovery plan that I set up. and then I just drill into the folder structure, and we see that I've got the data volumes in there for each of the VMs of that VPG, and this is sitting on S3 now. And so now, if I need to reconstitute this from, let's say, a complete disaster, I've lost both locations. This is still sitting in Amazon. I can construct a new ZVM and import them into one that knows nothing about this configuration.
Just don't lose your keys.
Right. So put those on. I put my keys on Google. So.
Dropbox, very safe.
But this is again a key point in the whole cloud fabric piece, the portability. Okay, so we are encapsulated here a full workload, including a free tier application, networking, all of that stuff, and now we can actually physically take it anywhere. Okay, anywhere we will be able to hydrate it, we can. And I know, Chris, that you asked that question.
How does the cataloging work as far as, like, say, you've got site A, site B, tertiary is cloud, site A goes belly up, but that's where you're backing up from. Site B has no awareness of what was in site A. Can you catalog what's in Amazon and pull it back down? Like, what's your...
Anything that is still live, was live, they have full awareness to that. So if I have a virtual production group that's being replicated and being backed up, my secondary site knows what is backing up.
It's always aware.
And I can go and that. If this is something I copied somewhere else, then I will need to import it. I will need a manual import. Hey, there's a workload here, take it.
Okay, for the sake of time, I want to move on to the next thing I'm going to show, which is what's coming next. So that's here now. Let me try to fight with this screen resolution here. So I think that's as big as I'm going to make it for you. And what we're showing here, this is, as Josh was talking about earlier from the beginning. Why did this start in the middle? This is us on Hyper-V. So there's the SCVMM. And I'm going to select some virtual machines that need to be protected, and then go to the Zerto Virtual Manager. And as you just saw with the one running in against VMware infrastructure, it looks exactly like this. And so in our DNA is to make sure that this is simple and intuitive for an administrator that hopefully is not having to do disaster recovery failovers ever, till they may forget what the tool looks like. But unless you're doing migrations, then this is something that needs to be an intuitive thing, regardless of what's underneath it. And that's what we're able to do with the ZVM and the Web UI. And I'm just picking out some virtual machines that I want to go from point A to point B, have them protected in my virtual protection group as a disaster recovery, and I'm going to be able to do things such as change the boot order, just as we were showing and talking about with the vSphere capability, the exact same capability. I create a delayed boot group. Yes?
Can you go back in the video for a second and pause and show, I think the only difference is on the right side there, the terminology. Am I correct, Josh?
It's actually the same terminology right now.
Yeah, it's
going to be actually instead of data store, I forgot what's the name in Hyper-V.
Right.
That's basically the only difference.
So when I first did this, I was just using the Zerto interface. There was no difference. It was like I could have done this off vSphere. So I have added in here in a second. We go to a layout that you can kind of see site A, site B, San Francisco, Boston, and us in the middle. So now what I want to do is a failover test. So I've got the site A VMs that I want to do a failover test, and it's going to go over to Boston from San Fran. And this is my target location. And you're just looking at those SCVMM inventories of just virtual machines running, just as you do in vCenter. So it's very intuitive and easy to see what's going to happen next when I do a failover test. So there's my two sites. I got some VMs being protected, and I'm going to do a failover test just as I would in vSphere. I'm going to pick out which one I want to do, and then just run a failover test. And then what you'll see happen is in the background, and then we'll pop over to it at the target site. The VMs are going to spin up, and then they'll come online, and we'll be able to do our failover testing. And so here's next, and start the failover test. And a couple of blips here, and then we'll start seeing some activity on the Boston site. So it's very intuitive as far as if you're familiar with our tool at all, then you're going to be able to be familiarized with it very quickly on whatever the underlying infrastructure is, which is that any concept. So it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to make it look like a ransom note, when you're trying to work with, with your tools. So you want them to look the same. So here they are. See, there's the VMs. They're stopped right now, but they're coming up, and
The funny thing I noticed actually, because the beta is just coming out now, and when you click to deploy the appliance, it asks for the root password, and I'm thinking, is this a trick question, a root password on a Windows Hyper-V host? But it is obviously just the local admin details, and for me it was really cool just to see, this VMworld best of show winning replication technology, deploying it to Hyper-V and seeing the same real-time replication just is absolutely mind-blowing from my perspective.
And there it is. So we've got up. These are now starting, and the rest, as they say, is very expected behavior.
The rest is future.
So this is the future piece, and these will complete out. But I do want to open this up for more questions. That was really the two things we wanted to show you hit now and what's coming in the very short term. And there we are, meeting SLA, and we can stop our failover test.
Hey, I promised Josh was never here. I promised him that you'll ask us tough questions, guys. What's going on?
I think it just makes sense. I made the comment on Twitter. You guys obviously are not watching, but it's definitely an advantage to any enterprise to not retrain staff. And if you've got the tools looking identical across the environment, because I think a lot of them use Hyper-V in the smaller sites, point of sale, Robo, probably using VMware in the data center, and able to do replication, kind of train everybody once. The tool looks the same across the board. There's some advantages there, really, for any tool. So, no question on that. Why don't you make it harder? There's really no way to make that simpler.
Well, how much different would you make it? I mean, thinking from if you would make it different, how much different would it look?
I'll give you an answer to that. We could have, instead, you see we're using our web-based here, our web-based UI. We could have gone like SCVMM deep integration here and vCenter deep integration there, which would give you a different way of doing things in SCVMM versus in vCenter. We went the other way, where we have our own web-based user interface, and we have the ZCM. Do you have the ZCM here in your other environment?
I think so, but
look, if you have,
you mean like doing it from in a plugin and then making that look
not even
different?
a plugin, you can do a Go deep integration. I can go right-click integration. I can go many things like that. So we're actually saying, hey, we are providing an abstraction, and not in the actual OS level, but in kind of like the admin level of your entire. And Amazon will look exactly the same. And so would Google, and so would every one of our implementation. And you have the Zerto Cloud Manager, which is actually a multi-site manager, where you go in, you see a list of all your workloads going here. This is going from site A to site B. You can fail them over, migrate, do whatever you want. You can see consolidation of all the alerts from everywhere. You can see basically the, again, if you're a service provider, you can see the customer constructs and all of that stuff, all from a single user interface. Okay, so it's not only, hey, I want it to look the same VMware and Hyper-V. We believe we want it to look the same across all of the infrastructures, and we want to simplify it as much as we can.
The trick is always that classic thing where I've got 12 vendors that I use, and they all told me about their single pane of glass. So I have 12 single pane of glass, and but it's better. Like Chris says, it's if it's one interface for this application, regardless of what's behind it, then that's better than, like you said, deep integration.
Right. Silence.
Bravo.
It's pretty straightforward. I mean, I don't know, there's too much you can
Straightforward on the surface, because the bit below is harder.
This is a lot like our install calls of, okay, that's it. As far as
Let me, before Steven cuts off, the offsite backup is the fact that we're basically introducing a new way of looking at longer retention. Do you guys think it has any merit? Do you think people would, it's a new feature, we just released it a couple of months ago, so we're still in the phase of the market, oh, okay, we can do that, let's see what we can do with that. Do you think it makes sense? Do you think it doesn't make sense? People will still want their old local backup always, or sometimes, or some workloads here, some workloads there. What's your thought on that?
It's tough to find that sweet spot. I mean, I work in a financial services organization. We have a supposed, requirements to keep stuff for, whatever the fake 7 years thing, which there's no way we'll actually keep it for 7 years, but we keep it for, a couple of years. We have yearly backups and then monthlies all the way up to that. And then they roll off the monthlies, and we keep those yearlies for as long as we think we can actually recover them. Mm-hmm. But, you hit the year, that's pretty fair.
No, we can do the year. Currently, it's just a user interface thing. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
We can do a year or 7 years. To me, the question is more about having your backups all done at a remote site instead of having local backups. Do you think that will fly?
That's the purpose of the backup, right?
The problem with having all your data protection offsite is your speed of recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You are just not able to boot a machine from within the backup if your backups are offsite. So no go. Backups always, there's at least your last point in time recovery on site, at least your last point in time. So if your SQL crashes, immediate boom, this is last point in time. You cannot afford to have that offsite.
Yes, but for that you can use in many cases snapshots. You can use storage snapshots for that in many cases. Again, this is not the way we want to do things. We think that you need to do it virtual, but people do use storage snapshot for that anyway. Okay, so if you're using storage snapshot for that, then instead of deploying a backup software on your local site, you can have, keep in mind, we also have CDP, okay, for up to 5 dies. So
you'll still need unless the storage snapshot is in your product integrated, because the storage provider will not have single file recovery. Mm-hmm. Storage snapshots is cool for having that point in time, but they don't have the recovery power that you have. So you still have to, you will leverage storage snapshots, then I'm okay with that. But you still need all your recovery power, whether or not it's a VM, a LUN, or a single file or single email. All that power needs to be on site for immediate use.
I understand that. I must say that I'm also challenging that a little bit. Because while this is correct, and many people have said that, I also see people that say, once they start seeing the benefit of not having any local abstraction to their production. Because think about it, no backup windows, no nothing, okay? And they say, okay, in the case that my whole database is gone, I can fail over to my other site and run from there until I'll copy the data back and do a failback, okay? Mm-hmm. Remember, you can fail over, okay? So it's not like you're gone, you can fail over. Second, in the normal case where actually I'm looking for a file or a table or something like that, I have CDP on the other side, okay? So I can actually go much more granular than my backup and go an hour back and not only 12 hours back, because that's my backup, and retrieve the file or the table from there and fix it back in my production site.
Yeah,
okay?
which doesn't really work when a VM crashes and I need the VM and it's a 2 terabyte VM that you need to bring back. It doesn't work that way.
Then you fail over. I agree. Then you fail over.
So you always need at least your full copy on site, at least. For granular recovery, immediate recovery, I agree with everything that is. You at least need one full copy for both VM recovery, LUN recovery, single file recovery. You cannot afford to do CDP for a complete VM or a volume to bring back.
To bring back, no, but you can fail it over.
No, if it fails on site, if my machine fails on site, I need to be able to bring the machine back. I also need to be able to bring a single file back immediately without being, without the need of a big pipe.
And I'm not going to fail over the entire system just because one VM in it needs to be recovered. That's a key thing.
I'm okay with anything.
You can fail over that VM. You can fail over.
No, I can't, because it's got a big heap of dependencies.
No, I know. You can fail over that virtual protection group. Okay.
Right, but no, I can't. It's not an acceptable solution to I've got to bring back some part of one VM.
If you've got a corrupted database, you're not going to suddenly recover the database to the alternate site and the entire web services and other end-tier stuff that's wrapped around it, because you have to have data locality for
my dependency group may be 300 VMs.
It affects performance.
And this is Hans's point about you need to be able to
I totally understand that. I'm seeing some of our customers are actually telling me different things.
The other way?
I agree on anything that is retention. Anything that is retention, you can put it anywhere you want. you could put multiple copies on site to be able to spin up fast a VM of a week ago. I'm okay if you say I don't want to do that. I'm okay with that. But you need to at least be able, a VM that crashes need to be able to instantly recover. That's business loss if it has to come from the other side.
So let me
It's just
translate.
physically not possible to move a
Let me
2
translate what you're
terabyte
saying.
VM at a
Let
time.
me translate what you're saying here for my advantage for a second. So if I include one copy local, you say I have the perfect backup solution.
I'm not saying perfect.
No,
If it includes the
Yeah.
table and file recovery,
Yeah.
that's okay.
But one, not the full
No,
retention.
it could. I just said it could be a storage snapshot, as long as it's integrated in the recovery part of your solution.
Makes sense. Yeah, and that's exactly what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out what will be the kind of like the. Again, we want to look at data protection as a whole. Okay, not only this or that, because people want a single tool, as just like was mentioned here. Okay.
Well, actually, it could not be a storage snapshot because if your
no,
storage
I know,
fails,
no.
you still want to have your VMs.
Anyway, I don't believe in storage
That,
snapshot
in
anyway.
that
So
case,
it's okay.
you would probably fail over to the other side.
Yeah. And again, storage snapshot is not the way we work anyway. We don't like storage snapshot. I can't do vSAN with storage snapshot. So don't worry, I'm not going storage snapshot way. I'm just trying to get some feedback from you guys. What will constitute the kind of like the ultimate data protection kind of like solution? And what you're saying, and again, the first was saying that. That's why I asked the question about local backup in advance, because I know that's our kind of like our missing spot there. Is you're saying, hey, if I have one last point, file level recovery, table level recovery, or full VM recovery on site, and then the rest I'm pushing off site to you, that gives me everything I need.
I would even stretch it the other way around. Why not running your infrastructure totally off-site and having your retention on-site? Which means that from an economical perspective, we all want to go to the cloud, but we are responsible for the information of our data. Why not keeping our data with us and letting it run in the cloud?
I'm 100% there. That's where I started when I said, even if I run in Amazon,
Yeah.
I need an insurance policy back home. I need my data back home. Even if it would take me a week to recover, doesn't matter. I need something back home. I can't trust Amazon to do everything for me. Okay?
But essentially for me, DR is a failover to a remote site, whereas backup and recovery is all about local site. I don't want to be traversing a wire if I can avoid it for any of my recovery activities. My idiot DBA drops a table, right, or drops a database that shouldn't have been dropped. These things should not require me to transit that data across the WAN link. So for me, there's an off-siting component that's about DR, there's an on-site component that's about backup and recovery. And then there's a compliance thing, which is another whole story.
Yeah, well, the challenge comes in there is that at some point you say, well, let's keep one copy on site. And like, oh, what happens if it's over a weekend and a bunch of stuff happens and there's no ops people watching? So we have to keep 48 hours of copies. And then,
Somewhere you trade off.
Yeah.
But that's different for each protection group potentially. Right? Using the technology you've already got to bring the backup local.
Just depends on an RTO, RPO.
Yeah, the challenge is
SLAs you got in
understanding
place
where
and
it's
all that.
backup versus business continuity, which is assume that whatever the failure scenario is, the failure scenario is the whole site went away, then all right, you've got to recover. But the failure scenario is
Think about this. What if Azure screws up their SSL certificate again? No, serious. Your business is down just because they screwed up their certificate, and you cannot recover that SQL database. You cannot afford to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
The one
Need to
thing
buy
I want
insurance.
to add, though, is if you're going through the exercise of deploying Zerto and building VPGs, and there's all these reasons you would not fail over the VPG, maybe you're not doing it correctly. If it's such a huge thing to go to DR that you're willing to like have all these backups and this Rube Goldberg machine to get one table back, that's kind of a specific use case that I think CDP solves. We're talking about more of a disaster here than just one table, I think. And that's the whole point of the exercise of embracing a VPG and DR or continuous data protection or whatever you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me you've never actually failed over and you don't trust it, which is probably 95% of enterprise anyways, but it means that you need to get comfortable with that.